All right, today we are diving deep into the world of Christian social work. We're going to be looking at the ethical frameworks that really guide people in this field. This is that fascinating and sometimes tricky intersection of faith, professional codes, and just raw human need.
So let's just start with the single most important question that anyone in a helping profession has to ask themselves probably every single day. How do we help without doing harm? Because as we're about to see, good intentions are just not enough. This is our foundation.
So here's our roadmap for this explainer. We're going to kick things off with the why, the motivation. Then we'll get into the professional tools. After that, we'll explore the big ethical debates, see how faith fits into the picture, tackle a real-world messy dilemma, and then wrap up with what might be the most important virtue of all.
Okay, first up, the foundation. Before we can even begin to talk about how to do this work, we've got to understand why. What is the core motivation for a Christian social worker? What gets him out of bed in the morning?
The source material doesn't frame this as just a career path. It calls it a stewardship vocation. And that word systemically is so important. This isn't just about handing out a meal here or there. It's a calling to look at the whole person, their whole environment, and to care for them ethically and compassionately as an act of stewardship.
And this verse from Colossians really gets to the heart of the biblical side of things. See, it's not a rule book with 1,000 regulations. The call is to cultivate a certain kind of character, one that's full of grace and wisdom. That's what prepares you to actually know how to respond to the unique person right in front of you.
Okay, so let's move on. A calling is the fuel, for sure, but you still need an engine to get anywhere. And that's where professional theory and all the tools of the trade come in. This is the how of actually helping. You know, it's so easy to think of theory as this dusty academic thing, but this quote just nails it. To be effective, you have to be asking why, constantly. Why is this happening? What are the underlying factors? Theory is what gives you the framework to even ask those questions, to move beyond just putting a Band-Aid on things.
And here's why that shift is so critical. Without a good theoretical lens, it is way too easy to just see the problem, the addiction, the homelessness, whatever it is, as just this isolated thing you need to fix. But a solid framework, it forces you to see the person, to step into their world and try to understand the context and the meaning behind the struggle. It's a total game changer.
All right, let's get into the thick of it. Making ethical calls. When you're faced with a really tough choice, what's your guide? Well, philosophy gives us 3 main paths, and social workers actually use all of them.
So first up, you've got the rules path. This is known as deontology. Think of these as your non-negotiables, your bright lines. Things like your duty to maintain client confidentiality. The action itself is either right or wrong, period. Its strength is that it's clear and consistent.
The second path, well, it focuses only on the results. This is consequentialism. Here, the big question is, which action is going to produce the best outcome for the most people? It's really practical, right? It's focused on real-world impact. But you can probably see the danger. It can sometimes justify sacrificing an individual for the good of the group.
And path number 3 is all about character. We call this virtue ethics. And it completely flips the question. It's not, what should I do? It's, what kind of person should I be? Now, for a Christian social worker, this is where things really click, because it lines up so perfectly with biblical ideas of spiritual formation and developing the fruit of the Spirit.
So that brings up a huge question. You've got these professional ethical frameworks. How does a person of faith actually weave those together with their biblical worldview? How do you hold a professional code in one hand and Scripture in the other?
I think this is the best way to think about it, a great metaphor from the source material. Your professional code of ethics, that's your map. It lays out the terrain, the boundaries, the accepted standards of practice. But Scripture, that's your compass. It gives you your ultimate direction, your true north.
Let's take a quick look at the map, the NASW Code of Ethics. It's built around these 6 core values. Now, a Christian social worker can look at this list: service, social justice, the dignity of a person, human relationships, integrity, competence, and say, yep, I'm on board with every single one of these. There's no conflict there at all.
But here's where the integration gets really powerful. A Christian approach takes a value like dignity and worth of the person, and it gives it deeper roots. It's not just a nice humanistic idea anymore. It's grounded in the core theological belief that every single person is made in the imago Dei, the image of God, and that changes everything. It means that even when a client has made terrible choices or is even hostile to you, your starting point isn't judgment, it's reverence for the divine image they carry. Now for the real test. Because theory is one thing, but what happens out in the field when these perfectly good, noble values smash right into each other?
Let's make this super practical with a scenario from our reading. Imagine this. A client at your ministry's food pantry pulls you aside and confides that she's been shoplifting just to feed her kids. She's desperate and she begs you not to tell anyone. But here's the kicker. You know the owner of the little grocery store she's hitting. He's a member of your church. So what do?
Well, the answer isn't some simple formula you can just look up. It's a process, a framework for faithful reasoning. You start by seeking wisdom outside of yourself, through prayer and scripture. Then, and this is so important, you talk to people. You consult with supervisors and colleagues. You never face these things alone. Then you reason through it systematically, and in the end, you have to own your decision.
And when you break it down like this, you can see exactly why it's so agonizingly difficult. Your professional duty to client confidentiality is in a head-on collision with your duty to prevent harm to the store owner. The biblical call for justice is pulling against the biblical call for mercy. There is just no clean, easy answer here that's going to satisfy every value on the table.
Which brings us to our final and maybe our most important point. If there aren't any easy answers, if these dilemmas are this messy, then what's the posture we're supposed to have? What's the actual goal of this whole ethical journey? This quote just captures the core tension perfectly. That passion to help, that zeal, it's absolutely essential. But without wisdom, that very same passion can cause a whole lot of damage. This work requires both courage to step in and the restraint to do it wisely.
So here's the bottom line. Ethical maturity isn't about memorizing a rule book so you can spit out the right answer every time. It's about committing yourself to a process of thoughtful, faithful reasoning that leans heavily on God's wisdom, your professional community, and a huge dose of humility.
And that leaves us with this final question to really chew on. In a field where success is often impossible to even measure and where dilemmas don't have perfect solutions, what is the real goal? Maybe the true measure of our work isn't about achieving some perfect outcome, but about walking through the mess with faithfulness.